Riley Gaines calls on Caitlin Clark, Simone Biles to oppose trans athletes, issue would be solved. The movement against transgender athletes in women's and girls' sports has drawn support from the majority of Americans, politicians in power and even a niche consumer market. Now, one of the leaders of that movement is calling for some big star-powered reinforcements. Former NCAA swimmer and conservative influencer Riley Gaines has been one of the most active advocates of the movement. Dating back to her infamous tie with transgender swimmer Leah Thomas at the 2022 NCAA Championships. In 2024, Gaines became the first brand ambassador for the activist sportswear brand XXXY Athletics. The brand gained prominence and profitability by becoming the first sportswear company dedicated to promoting activism against transgender inclusion in women's sports. It also created financial incentives for women's college athletes across the country to take a stand on the issue by signing with the brand. Gaines believes two stars can help propel the brand and movement to new heights. People who I think would be critical to this movement are, of course, people like Caitlin Clark, people like Simone Biles, which I think is definitely a stretch. But these are women who have been able to shatter glass ceilings and break barriers, who are role models to young girls across the country, Gaines told Fox News Digital in an exclusive interview. To have them emphatically say that trans athletes do not belong in women's sports would be. The issue would be solved across all levels, like yesterday, if they were willing to do this. Gaines said it's not as far out of reach as it sounds due to a culture shift among Americans to protect women and girls from transgender athletes. XXXY founder Jennifer Say, a former U.S. gymnast and Levi's executive, addressed Gaines' pitch to Clark and Biles in a statement to Fox News Digital. "We are always encouraging more female athletes to join the fight, and we'd love to work with anyone standing up for the integrity of women's sports. We are in constant conversations with those who have stood up or are considering doing so," Say said. "We believe this ends when the athletes defend women's sports in large numbers." Say previously told Fox Business her brand surpassed a seven-figure profit in its first 10 months in 2024, but she still believes her brand is lacking a superstar women's athlete as a brand ambassador. "There isn't a top-tier competitive female athlete or coach that has stood up for the protection of women's sports," Say said. "We don't have any currently competing top-tier athletes who have spoken out. I think that's an illustration of how far we have to go. It should be normal for them to stand up and say, 'I will fight for the protection of women's sports,' and yet they haven't because I think a lot of them are afraid of being called terrible names." Gaines and Say the brand is in talks with prominent women athletes, including Olympians. "They're in the works and there are conversations with many amazing athletes, Olympians and beyond," Gaines said. A recent New York Times Ipsos survey found the vast majority of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, don't think transgender athletes should be permitted to compete in women's sports. Thinking about transgender female athletes, meaning athletes who were male at birth but who currently identify as female, do you think they should or should not be allowed to compete in women's sports? The survey asked. That's what we can say. Don't forget to support our channel by liking, commenting, sharing and subscribing. We thank you all for your support.